My guest today has a hurricane hovering above him and he's sending it my way to Florida, but we won't get mad at him for that. It's been a crazy, crazy year as we lean towards like the end of 2023. I'm excited to talk about kind of like summarize and talk about what we've been all talking about together. And if you guys are looking in, if you're looking for the pulse of crypto, the pulse of the crypto universe and what's been going on in the Bitcoin world, you're in the right place here because not only do you have me, Charlie Shrem, at the beautiful Charlie Shrem show, but we have another awesome personality who doesn't just witness the waves, he rides them. Ashton Addison, you're the CEO and founder of the renowned Crypto Coin Show. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Charlie. It's my honor and excited to dive into 2023. And I don't know if it's been all that everyone's hoped it was, but I think that there's definitely been advancements in the industry and some good things have come out of it.
I feel like this year was a lot more fun than last year was. From playing with Unibots and Friend Tech and all these kind of things that were happening, and at least from my point of view, witnessing more of the negative stuff and not being involved and getting money stuck. At least 2023 was a better year, but it's not over. We're kind of like getting into the fourth quarter now. But yeah, what have you been kind of focused on or working on the last couple of months?
Yeah, so I've been working on a lot of the same stuff that I work on since I started Crypto Coin Show in 2014, which is, my bread and butter is interviewing founders and startups and investors in the space, sort of get a firsthand glimpse on what are the new projects that are being worked on, what are the advancements of the best projects in how they're moving the blockchain industry forward, and sort of following the narratives and seeing, are they just fads that will fade away, or is this actual real advancements that are going to come into the industry? And there was definitely a few narratives, when Bitcoin started exploding in January, there was a few great narratives that were like, hey, AI, this
Yep.
could be something that could integrate with blockchain, that could actually help blockchain and help both industries grow at the same time. I think that the fad was, like everything, so it's pushed out of proportion. But there definitely is some integrations that are happening with AI and blockchain, which I think will help both industries. But of course, there's always an opportunity to take advantage of where there's, throw AI in the name here and
Yeah.
pump and that, and then it sort of fades away after Bitcoin sort of spurred out in the spring and stopped its exponential rise, and then all of a sudden the AI companies starting up with blockchain and they weren't as hot as they were. But that, besides AI, also the ZK and the privacy efforts, I think those are definitely something that is needed and will be valuable in the space. And it's not a fad, but it's not something that can be done overnight to
Yeah,
add
of
more
course.
privacy into the blockchains. So those are the two things from the start of the year. There's a lot of other stuff that happened, but from January, that was what I was thinking is 2023 could be the year of AI and zero knowledge proof and increasing more privacy and adding more automation into blockchain.
So we definitely saw a lot of that. We saw like a huge amount of, if we're taking the regulatory thing out and the macroeconomic world out, you're right. We saw a huge amount of like growth in just the back end infrastructure of crypto. We saw more like trading automation. We saw a huge amount of that. And kind of like because the spotlight was taken off, you were able to go and build out a lot more privacy technologies as well, under like roll-ups and ZK snarks and all these different things. So I completely agree. It's almost like it was good as that spotlight was taken off.
Yeah, no, it is good because it pushes away the fluff, right? And it's sort of like, you and me have both been in the industry for many years, and as we see the credibility threshold of startups need to increase for investors to actually see them as viable. Back in 2017, you could have a paper with no product, and a lot of people would still throw money at it because this is something new. And
Ah,
as people got burned, they realized, hey, maybe we should actually look for an MVP or product market fit or customers before we start throwing our capital into something that has AI in the name.
so you think the bar is has been risen now, like in terms of how, I guess from a VC perspective, I can tell you 100%. we're not investing in things that are just pieces of paper and decks anymore, especially if if they have any evaluation with the $1 million number in it, even if it's $1 million. You got to have something. But you're definitely seeing you're seeing the caliber of products and people coming onto the show and launching things better now in the second half of the year.
I definitely, compared to the last bull run, I see a major improvement in the quality of projects and the threshold for throwing capital in. But I think it also depends on the stage of the market. When all of the cryptos are going crazy and the market is up only, it, not only do the valuations increase, but the
that scared the shit out of me.
Hurricane alert.
Oh my god, sorry. It's hurricane. I told you this thing is no joke. You're sending the hurricane my way.
Sorry,
you were talking about I think you were talking about different topics and stuff like that of the industry, but you were leaning towards, I think you're sections of our industry that aren't price sensitive have been growing.
Yeah, no, and that's what I am most interested in is, the foundational elements, the service layer applications, the networks that are being built that will host, the dApps that stick around after, the fads have passed. What are the underlying infrastructures? I'm always looking for what's the next Microsoft operating system or Apple, that's going to host a lot of this blockchain technology. And that's why I, whenever there's some new product that just has one function, it's great, but the chances of it innovating the entire industry aren't as high as an operating system that has the ability to host thousands of different kinds of applications. And I've actually seen that with the ZK trend that I was talking about in January, that I'm sort of seeing that transforming a little bit into the modular blockchains and the layer 3 blockchains. Throughout the early summer, I had quite a few different blockchain protocols come on the show that they are, not only are they scaling Ethereum, but also bringing in cross-chain interoperability and also bringing in a ZK and privacy layer into it. And it looks like that's something that's really promising.
Yes.
And I think the layer 3s is sort of new in people's heads. What's layer 1? What's layer 2?
Okay.
What's layer 3? But that's something that I've seen that I think is totally credible moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great way to pinpoint for the historians 50 years from now that are listening to the show looking back. This year was the year that the crypto natives got comfortable. And tell me if you disagree. That this year was the year that we got comfortable adding additional chains to our MetaMask and playing around with Base or Optimism or Arbitrum or different, we're understanding now how scaling and layers and privacy are all working into it. I think this was the year that thought.
Yeah, I agree. And there are a lot of different layer 2s and layer 3s potentially to add into your MetaMask, and it can get confusing, especially if you're not already deep involved in DeFi.
Yeah,
and there's a few, I think, underlying reasons why it's taken off, and a lot of it is speculation. But I think out of that, it will grow into what sort of sticks around. And Base is a great example of that. The initial takeoff of Base, it launched, and the first two things to come out were this meme coin here and there, Brian and Bald meme coin, which we saw some people on Twitter had bought it and became millionaires overnight. And that, of course, generated huge interest for degenerate gamblers and speculators to, hey, we should start bridging our funds into this layer 2 network because it could be the future. But right now, there's a lot of people making money. And I think it's good and it's bad because it's pushing innovation, but also it's Wild West where, if you don't know any better, you're going to move all your funds into something that eventually those same people that made millions, those same tokens ended up rugging and losing millions from the same people, and they didn't cash out. And although the chain is still doing very well, it's doing this Base chain although it's one of the newest, it's actually doing better than since Arbitrum Optimism in terms of the amount of funds in there. And even though you can't even withdraw from it right now, people don't care. They're like, hey, this is where the action is at. So we're going to stick around and see if anything fundamental and valuable comes out of this in the midterm to long term.
Yeah, I think people always thought that blockchains needed to launch kind of in a grassroots way, similar to that Bitcoin did, but then like BNB and Binance chain, Binance Smart Chain, which ended up just becoming Smart Chain, kind of proved out that you can have like a crypto company launch their own and then protocol and kind of support it, and that's what Base is with Coinbase. There's like the difference is, for example, like their DAO doesn't just give money to everyone. They pick very specific, and they're trying to be a little bit better. At least I'm hearing from the VC side of things. But you're right. We've definitely grown up. This was an important year that we needed so far. We're 3 months into it, but we're three quarters into it now. But it was definitely, and I'm excited to see what the holiday season kind of brings for us. I don't want to talk about the macro and regulatory world, but we've had to grow this year with a lot of pressure from the regulatory world and the macro world. I mean, the rates and the regulations and the arrests and the bankruptcies and everything that happened this year created a lot of headwinds for us. And then in spite of that, there's still been a huge amount of growth in the industry.
Yeah, you're right. It's amazing to see that the true people that have their heads down building are, for the most part, remaining unfazed by it. But most people who have been in the legal industry know that whenever there's an incident or a lawsuit, it's not something that gets solved overnight. And we're still seeing even the exchanges that had incidents 5 years ago, that's still playing out. Never mind 2022, which was a crazy year.
It takes time. It takes time. Speaking of like rise and falls, we've seen like crypto media, rise and fall. We've seen different. We've seen like Coinbase, CoinDesk be on the verge of bankruptcy, and people are trying to like buy it out all the time. And it's like, I don't know if it has ever been profitable or whatever. And our industry is really our podcasters. There's like a dozen or so, you, me, and others that we're like the last independent media, and it allows us to like focus more on the context and the narrative, as opposed to like the short-term gains that media has to clickbait. It's not their fault, but they have to like create these like clickbaity titles and articles and focus on like the Tamagotchi and the fur babies, as opposed to we have the longer shows and everything like that. How long have you been doing your show?
Yeah, 2014 was the first episodes.
Holy crap.
We've done about 1,300 interviews and videos. So yeah, it's been a long road, and we still have the same vision that we had when we initially set out. We saw the potential for the blockchain industry to revolutionize, not just money and the finance industry, but all industries that either do transactions or have data, which is every industry. So we wanted to provide a voice for those companies that were building innovations that would transform these different industries. And that's why we're sort of taking the high road or the long approach, and let's get the founders here to have the discussion about how they're actually innovating, hear it straight from them, in how we're going to change the world. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And we understand that.
You've been podcasting for almost 10 years. How does that feel?
Feels amazing, and hopefully we've made a difference. I'm at year 5. Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of products on that have become unicorns and are still sticking around today. And there's a lot that died, and a lot of it probably wasn't their fault. Some of it was, but that's just the way that these businesses go. And I think it's a lot of the crypto companies right now, they're realizing, just as you said with CoinDesk, it's hard to have a profitable, when you're in the bull market, you see, whatever, it's so easy. You don't even need to do anything. The money's just making itself with the company. And then when you realize that there's a 4-year cycle in between those bull runs, how do you manage the burn rate and make sure that, you're able to pay the employees and still have profitable company consistently? you know?
So you're sitting there and you're giving advice to your guests who are starting out these new companies, and you're saying to these CEOs, you're saying like, hey, I've seen companies like rise and fall in the space. I know what works. And they kind of come, they look to you, I guess, and they kind of come on the show, and I kind of do the same thing a little bit. I'm like, I've seen this, I've seen the ups and downs, I've seen these trends, I've seen these waves. This is where I think things, will go or should go. And you probably give a lot of like really cool advice to people. How do you, when you're writing the shows and you're producing and you're kind of like looking towards future, how do you kind of like, I know it's hard to like follow what's going on right now, and I'm asking a little bit selfishly for myself, but also because I know the listeners want to hear, but like I guess talk to me about the evolution of your podcast and how it's changed, and so we can kind of see into the future a little bit.
Yeah, I sort of put my investor cap on sometimes when I see which projects come on the show and years back, and they're still here, and look back and say, hey, what made those companies still stick around and continue to grow despite bear market or bull market? And I sort of, I like asking the tough questions, not to be too tough, but there's people that are putting their hard-earned capital into these companies to help them grow, and the founders have some kind of diligence to the investors to say, to follow through on, if they're going to give them capital, they want to return more of it. So I sort of like to, throw some investor-related questions like, how is the company sustainable? How are you actually, do you actually have customers? How are you going to make it through a bear market? How are you going to make sure, if this is a Web3 game, how are you going to make sure it just doesn't have a fad when it comes out and then it dies a month later? How do you actually have something beyond the hype of the word blockchain? And I can give as much advice as I can just based on what I've heard from other companies. But I just, I like hearing the thought process of the founders when they come on in their seed stage. And then I like to follow up with them as well, do quarterly videos or every 6 months to see, like, have you continued on with what you said, or did you pivot? And it's totally fine to pivot as well.
Have you had the ability to have like a relationship with your audience in any way?
Yeah, we do. And, we are also continuing to grow in different ways and can continue to engage with newsletter, shorts, social posts. I think it's a balance of trying, for the independent podcasters and the influencers, trying to balance having fundamentals and long-term insight with things that are exciting. Sometimes when you have an interview with a startup, nobody knows whether it's going to become a unicorn or not. And most people are just like, I want a quick return right now. I want, and they don't want to have to siphon through a startup that, could fail. They just want to be like, they just want to see, the big mouth influencer with like leverage 100x, we're going to the moon tomorrow, so it's like, how do the people that actually have news publications that are focused on just the fundamentals, pushing out the fluff, attract more audience, and get people to understand that, just like investing in the stock market, if you invest with a 1 week horizon, it's a 50-50 that it's going to go up or down. But if you look in the 10-year horizon, the chances of it being up is like 80+%. It's going to be the same for blockchain.
I never really thought about it that way, and I think a lot of people haven't. Ashton, how can my listeners find your show?
Yeah, Crypto Coin Show on YouTube, youtube.com/CryptoCoinShow, and also our newsletter, which is cryptocoinshow.substack.com.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Charlie.